Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider Podcast. This episode today is going to be all about the life of a varsity athlete at the United States Naval Academy. So if you're in high school and potentially getting recruited by the Naval Academy, or if you're a parent of a midshipman who is a varsity athlete, this is going to be a tremendous insight into the day-to-day life of a midshipman at the Naval Academy who is also competing at the Division I level. And so if you're interested in kind of hearing about the complexities of the schedule between military obligations, academic obligations, and then competing and trying to win at the Division I level, this episode will be coded for you. So I'm really excited to share my experiences. It's actually going to be a little bit of a switch up. The episode is going to be hosted and moderated by my good friend and Academy Insider Advisory Board member, Shakir Robinson, my guy Shaq. And so I'll actually be talking about my experience and kind of be more on the guest side of today's episode. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to share my experiences and be joined by Crystan, who is a track and field athlete as well, and kind of compare some of the similarities and differences. So hope everything's going well. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the episode. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, enjoy the listen. The Academy Insider Podcast is sponsored by the Vermeer Group, a residential real estate company that serves the United States Naval Academy community and other select clientele in both California and Texas. If I can ever answer a real estate related question for you or connect you with a trusted Academy affiliated agent in the market which you're in, please reach out to me directly at grant@com. You can also reach out to me on my LinkedIn page, Grant Vermeer, and I'd be happy to respond to you there. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the episode.
All right. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. We got another episode, a special episode on the Academy Insider Podcast. I am Shakir Robinson. I'm taking over as a celebrity narrator today for our buddy Grant, and I want to welcome you guys to a special episode where we're going to talk about the balancing act of Naval Academy varsity athletes. And I got the pleasure today to have two former varsity athletes with us here today. One of my good friends, Grant, as well as Crystan. Yeah, good evening, guys. Good to have you guys on today. And then so we'll go ahead and jump right into it. Shakir Robinson, I'm class of 2015. I was a Navy football player from 2011 up until 2015. Played under Coach Niamat, and one of the greatest accomplishments that we had was beating Army 4 years in a row, and then also being able to go to the White House to meet the President Barack Obama for two Commanders in Chiefs trophies. And so, not a light feat, and hopefully this year we can continue that tradition. But I'll go ahead and open us up with Grant. If you could just give us a short introduction of who you are for those who may not know, maybe a first-time listener, first-time tuning in, and then we'll transition over to our other guests as well.
Nah, Shaq, I appreciate it, man. It's fun being on this side of it. Usually I'm the one actually moderating these things and doing the interviews, but it'll be fun to get to talk about my experience as a varsity athlete, so I appreciate it. Yeah, so I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm a Northern California kid. I went to a high school called Bellarmine College Prep. It was a Jesuit Catholic high school out in San Jose, California. Played multiple sports in high school, but knew pretty early on that I loved basketball, even though it was my worst sport. I was probably better at other things, but I just love basketball. Basketball flows through my veins. I love the game so much. And so I knew it's what I wanted to do and ended up getting to be recruited and play basketball at the Naval Academy, which was just a dream come true. So it was basketball that brought me to the Naval Academy.
Awesome. Thanks, man. And then we also have Crystan, one of my good friends that we know each other for a while. 2016 graduate of the Naval Academy. And if you can, give us a short introduction, who you are, where you're from, and then, what sports you played in high school as well.
Of course. Thanks for having me here. My name's Crystan McLemore. I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina. I went to Millbrook High School back in the day. Back then, I played basketball and ran track. As I got to junior year, I focused in on track after I realized I think I'm pretty good at this. Might be able to continue on into college. And I actually, back then, didn't even know about the Naval Academy. I found out through a recruiting letter this summer before my senior year and got in contact with the track coaches and got to do the drag program that way. So after that, that's pretty much what led me to the Naval Academy back then.
Awesome. So you found about it through a recruiting letter, but going back to Grant, how did that actual recruiting process work? As you're a high school student, did you want to go to the Naval Academy solely to be a midshipman, or did you want to go through the pathway of sports to also be able to play at the Division I level for varsity basketball?
Yeah, in full transparency, I didn't know much about the Naval Academy growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area. There's not much of a naval presence, to be honest with you. And so I didn't even really know what the Naval Academy was until I started getting recruited to play basketball. So for me, it was like a purely basketball opened my eyes to what the Naval Academy was. which then allowed me to kind of have an understanding and get to see it was an incredible life decision. But there was no Naval Academy for me without basketball. Like, that was a whole process. And to answer your question again, we're a Division I sports program. Coaches go out and they recruit. They go and scout and watch tournaments, and they're all out and about. And then they come in and like literally came to my high school and watched practice and recruited me and offered me, even though we don't do athletic scholarships because everyone's going for free. They did the quote unquote, like they offered you a spot on the team as a recruited athlete. Right. And so that was the process for me, the full thing. Coaches in the stands during summer basketball games, coming to my high school, talking to me, meeting my family, and then offering me a quote unquote scholarship.
Wow. Awesome. So that sounds pretty similar to my experience with Navy football my senior year. They as well, they sent the coach down. They said, hey, we have a great opportunity for you to go to the school and play at the Division I level, and then also get an amazing Ivy League type education, as well as on the back end being able to be a junior officer in the Marine Corps or the Navy. So also, Crystan, how did that work out for you, the actual process? Did the track coach give you a call and say, hey, we want you to run indoor, outdoor track for us? Or did you go primarily first as a midshipman, and then you decided to compete for a spot on the track team once you got to the Naval Academy?
Right. My experience was a little different. I ended up contacting them, and then they knew who I was. So once I got in contact with the two coaches there, they were very personable. They were explaining the whole process similar to how your coaches were doing to you, the opportunities that would open up for me going to the Naval Academy, and how they would take full care of me while I was there. And of course, on the back end, I had the grades to back it up. So that helped me get through the application process. But they were just so welcoming, and Naval Academy flew me out, and I was able to, they call it drag, but shadow one of the women on the track team who was a freshman athlete at the time. And they were really nice, and I got to live that life for a day or two. So that was pretty cool. That's probably my most memorable experience.
I actually have a question for you, Crystan, on that one. Like, so did you quite literally do that? Did that happen for you through the candidate visit weekend program? Was it not like a quote, like an official visit from the track team? Like it went through candidate visit weekend and they just assigned you a track athlete?
I don't think it was through that. I think it was something they set up purely through the track team. Because I don't remember going with like a group of individuals. I remember just being there by myself.
Okay, got it. So fast forward, you guys both in some way get recruited for varsity basketball / varsity indoor-outdoor track. You get to the Naval Academy. It's plebe summer. At that point, going through the amount of time it took for, I think, 6 weeks of plebe summer, at that time, did it matter that you were a varsity athlete at all? Did you get any special treatment? Did you get to practice with your team? Or how did that work out for you guys that were varsity athletes as soon as you hit plebe summer? And Crystan, we can start off with you.
Sure.
How did that go for you?
Even though I was a track athlete, I call myself like a field athlete. So I was really good at long and triple jump. So I was not a distance runner by any means. Like, warm-ups took me out back then. So plebe summer, I just remember so much running. I can only think of don't be last.
Okay.
So for me, that was the biggest challenge. I don't remember connecting with the track team until closer to the end of plebe summer, or maybe we had like a sports period. Mm-hmm. So we'd go, and that'd be like maybe an hour out of the day to go talk to the track coaches, but we didn't get to actually get into a routine until the end of plebe.
Okay. And Grant, did you get special treatment going through plebe summer, knowing that you were a basketball player?
Yeah, special's one word to use. Yeah, that's a way to say it. I think when you're at the academy, right, like sometimes it puts a little hyper focus on you because rightly so, the detailers were like, you probably came here just to play your sport, right? Like, well, welcome to a military school, right? And so there's like a little extra attention and focus. And so for me, like plebe summer was a big smack in the face, right? We talk about waking up to what did I just get myself into? Like that was day 3 for me during plebe summer. I woke up and I was like, what did I just do? Because like Crystan was saying, we have sports period during plebe summer, but it usually doesn't start until day 10 or day 14, somewhere in there. So again, you go a full 2 weeks where it is nothing but military boot camp, military indoctrination. You are not touching a basketball. And I was like, yo, what did I do? Like, I thought I was going to play basketball, man. Like, what is happening? And so that was definitely a huge wake-up factor. But then towards the mid part of plebe summer, you start getting your sports period, which is a good hour to hour and a half, where you get to be with your coaches, You get to practice your sport. A lot of times, because the coaches know plebe summer is so demanding and so grueling, a lot of times it'll be a lot of instruction. They're going over X's and O's and letting you sit and relax instead of putting you through an entire Division I basketball practice, right, on top of plebe summer.
Right.
So there's a good balance of, are you playing your sport, or are you just kind of sitting, relaxing, stretching, recovering, and learning about what your program is going to be at the end of plebe summer? And so that's kind of where the balance lied during that first summer.
Okay, thanks. And that kind of leads me into I'll talk about the elephant in the room, right? Is Navy football. I think we have quite the reputation at the Naval Academy, especially going through plebe summer, because the reality of it is we go through about the first half to 2/3 of plebe summer as any other fourth class midshipman would do, as any plebe would do. But around that last week of July, going into 2 weeks before reform, is when the varsity football players, we get cut loose to transition to prepare ourselves for fall camp.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, as a D1 division football player, sometimes we open up with teams like Notre Dame or other big schools where those guys have been training all summer long, and you got fourth class Robinson coming in that's been doing whatever military requirements, and so they have to find a way to kind of add some equilibrium. And so with that, they cut us out about 2 or 3 weeks earlier so we can transition to start being more competitive on the football field. But we're working just as much because we roll right into 2-a-days and then long days in the weight room just to have a chance to have a successful football season. So that's the Navy football experience. So after plebe summer, the academic year starts, and we're in August right now. So the academic year starts, you guys start to be with your team full on. And so, Grant, can you go ahead and start off with kind of what does a normal day for you being a Division I athlete look like schedule-wise, as far as waking up, practice schedule, and the academics as well?
Yeah, I think being a service academy athlete is one of the most difficult things that any college athlete can experience. And that's because your status as a varsity athlete doesn't change the academic experience of the Naval Academy. And so there is a morning training period. Some coaches will use it, others won't. For us, like in basketball, during off season, we would have conditioning 2 days a week and then lifts 3 days a week in the morning, right? So the entire off season, you're going over, you showing up Halsey Gym at 5:30 a.m. and you're doing your either conditioning or workout from that period. Then, just like any other midshipman, you're in class. And again, we're taking 18, 19, 20 credit hours in a semester. So you're going to class starting at 7:55 in the morning, a lot of times until about 2:30 or 3:20 in the afternoon. And you're taking 5 or 6 class periods during that day. And so it's difficult. I joke when I talk about Naval Academy academics, it's like high school on steroids, right? It's not like 2 periods in a day, and if you're tired, you can skip it and watch the lecture online. Like, no, class is mandatory. And so you're going to class for 5 to 6 hours a day after your initial lift in the morning. The majority of times for a sport like basketball, during our lunch period, we would have film. Like, we would go to Ricketts and we would go and we would watch film of the previous day's practice and go over it and prepare for the next day. You go back to class right in the afternoon, and then you have to go practice and compete at a Division I level and get ready to beat teams. Shaq, like you're saying, like for us, like we played teams like Michigan State, like Notre Dame, right? Like Ohio State, Oregon. Like, you're playing Power 5 conference level teams and you're expected to be able to compete. So like, you're tired, but you still have to compete at an extremely high level. And so that's the flow of, Division I athlete is morning workout, class, lunch, like film, back to class, then a 2.5 hour practice, then dinner, and then guess what? Then you have homework. And if you're a plebe, now you're doing plebe duties too. You're doing signature sheets, you're painting boards, you're trying to integrate with the classroom, you're studying your prono, right? Like, it is a massive demand on your time. And like, being a Naval Academy athlete is quite literally learning how to operate as a fully exhausted person, right? Like, you are constantly and consistently exhausted, and you have to still be ready to go perform at an extremely high level in everything that you're doing. So that's kind of the experience from me. And on the basketball side, I'm sure it was very similar as well on the track side, but I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so I think most of athletes will have a general schedule that's pretty similar to that. It could be something in the morning, you go to class, you probably do something at lunch, you go to more class, and then you do something again in the afternoon. So for Kristen, next question would be is what were your priorities as a fourth class midshipman with everything that Grant just told us between academics, your sport, and the requirements of a fourth class plebe midshipman? What were your priorities looking back when you were a plebe?
I think my biggest priority was academics. I knew that would take me the furthest. I was so scared of getting, I forgot what we called it, but when you didn't pass 6 weeks, your grades weren't good enough, and I didn't want to sacrifice the little bit of liberty
Unsat.
that they afforded us.
Oh,
So I worked really hard in the classroom. And then I think the one thing I was scared of, because I'm not the best swimmer, so I put myself on my own swim remedials just so I could continue to do what I wanted to do on my own time. I would get up on the mornings we didn't have practice and swim just so I could pass swimming. So I think that was my biggest stress on the daily grind on that, in addition to the practice and the lifts and the chopping through the hallways.
Yeah.
okay. So,
I was gonna cut in and say swimming is no joke.
It's no joke.
That may be the worst part of the whole thing. That may be the worst part of the whole thing. Because like we're saying, one of your classes, you got to go
swim in
from
full
Lejeune, change out of your uniform, get into your swim clothes, go swim for an hour. What, like, are you kidding? Like, go swim for an hour, then get out and be sprinting to your next class because you're going from the farthest building in the entire campus to the academic
and
building.
they get yelled at for being
Oh.
late.
So I think that just shows that another unique being a varsity athlete, specifically at the Naval Academy, is the extra requirements above, whether it's dribbling the basketball or doing field events for track and field. You also have to be some type of level of a swimmer. I won't say varsity swimmer, but you also have to be a swimmer, a boxer, and actually a wrestler as well. That I just don't think that most varsity athletes around the world, around the U.S. are doing as well.
Yeah. But if there's a person who's interested in the academy, who's thinking about coming, and like like you can't swim, like don't let that be a deterring factor. Like it's gonna stink because you're gonna have to learn how to, but they are going to teach you, right? They are going to teach you. It's not like you have to show up in that way. Again, it's not going to be fun. Full transparency, it's not going to be fun because you're going to be swimming a lot and you're going to be going to swim remedials, I'm sure, but on top of your normal classes. But you can still do it. You can still do it. Like you're allowed to show up even if you're not very competent in the water.
Okay, great. So that's a little bit about the schedule. That's a little bit about the priorities. And then I'll go ahead and this one over to Kristen first. So as you're a plebe, right, you got third class midshipmen, you got youngsters that are in front of you, you got second class midshipmen that are in front of you, athletes on your team, and you got seniors, firsties that are also in front of you as well. And so what was your experience like of coming from high school, not having the most experience and compared to somebody that's been at the academy for 3 years, and from a sports sense, trying to compete against them, because not everybody can be a part of every single meet. Not everybody can be a part of every single game. So what was your experience and what's the reality like of trying to compete for a position on the team to actually, was it throw, jump, play, and you're the new person in the hall?
Yeah, I think my challenge is I'm super competitive, so I didn't care what the rank was or the age. I wanted to try to be the best or try to make my mark or show that I could add to the team. So that was my focus. I would say plebe year, I remember it being particularly hard. So I think my body was just tired, getting adjusted to the schedule, always moving around. I think it was just more draining than I had expected. So balancing that, and then also for me, getting on like a weight program was new. So I didn't really lift weights until I got to the Naval Academy and the track team. We had like a person that gave us like a program. So all those things added together. So I'm glad I was able to balance that plebe year. I think it was a big challenge because I didn't hit the numbers that I thought I was going to hit, or that even when I was hitting in high school, it took to my second year, my youngster year, to start seeing those same results.
And did you get a chance to contribute as an active member in the meets, or were you kind of in a secondary role of, there was a third class or a senior in front of me, so I didn't really get a chance to really get my chance freshman year?
I did. I will say, plebe year, I was able to make my mark in triple jump. So that was my main event. Took a back seat and everything else.
Okay, awesome. And I'll throw that question over to you, Grant, because you're a plebe, right? Trying to fight for a spot on the team to, contribute. And is it normal for plebes to get a chance to start, to play? Or are you pretty much just a practice squad player where you give a look to the offense and the defense? Or what were your experiences like when you first, really got to start training with the basketball team?
Yeah, for me, and I think this is actually would be very similar to any other program across the country on the basketball side, is that answer is very dependent on the team that's currently there, the coaching staff. So it's more coaching staff related than it is Naval Academy related, if that makes sense. And so for me, I was coming after a coaching change. So I was the new
Okay.
coach, Ed DeChellis. I was his first recruiting class. So when I came in, there were not a lot of people who had stuck around in the program when the coach had changed. And so I came in and I played a lot as a plebe, which was super fun,
Wow.
right? Like I came in and I'm playing a lot, I'm contributing. I'm like, man, this is great. Like this is what I signed up for. That's what I came for. Like this is incredible. And but at the same time, right, how everything comes and goes, once they had been established and the program started winning more, they brought in more talented and more talented and more talented kids. So by the time I was a second class in my junior year, there were people coming in who were better basketball players than I was, right? And so I
Right.
went from like playing a lot as a plebe and playing a lot as a youngster to like not playing much my junior and senior year because we just got better players. Like there were people who were better than me that showed up. And so, it's one of those things where you're a part of a Division I sports program where the coach's job is to win, straight up, and like end of discussion. They're there to win,
Yeah.
and so obviously there's a sense of development, there's a sense of progression and coaching and mentoring and teaching, but they're going to put the best players on the floor who are going to give them the best chance to win, and like that's just the truth of it, right? And so that was an interesting experience for me to learn and taught me a lot of life lessons, honestly, going through that process as well.
As you're going through that process, right? You said as a plebe, you're playing a lot. Was maybe me not as normal, right, for freshmen to play as so much to get so much time on the clock. Basketball, unlike football, we may have 13 games a season. You guys had upwards of 30 games a season, more or less. So you're on the road going up to the Northeast. Can you talk a little bit about that? I remember a story you told me one time where you guys go up to whether it was like Pennsylvania or Maine or one of those northeastern states. You guys drive back that same night and you got to show back up at formation, or what were the expectations of you as a plebe, even though you're playing Division I basketball?
Yeah, so I never knew. Again, I'm from California. All these East Coast schools, they mean nothing to me, right? So when someone said, "Hey, we're going to Holy Cross today," I didn't realize that Holy Cross is a 9-hour drive from Annapolis. And we again, we got a good budget. Naval Academy has a good sports budget, but we're still driving, right? It's still a bus. We're not flying. So again, you're taking a 6, 7, 8-hour bus ride up to Massachusetts. And then, like, again, we would play our games Wednesday night at 7 p.m., right? And so the game goes from 7 to 9 or 9:30. You're on the bus at 10. We're driving back to Annapolis. You get back at like 4 to 5 a.m., right? And again, this is the Naval Academy, which means you don't get to sleep through your first couple of periods, right? Like, again, as a varsity athlete, you get excusals while you're in season from the morning formation. So I didn't have to go to formation at 0700, but I did have to show up at class at 7:55, right? And so you get back on that from the bus trip at 5 a.m. and you're at class in uniform, shaved, ready to go at 7:55 a.m. And then guess what? You have film at lunch and you have practice in the afternoon, and you got to be ready to go because you got another game on Saturday, right? And so that is, but that's the anecdote of the Naval Academy experience, and it's really difficult, and it's a grind, right? It's a grind, and it teaches it develops such a serious sense of resilience, toughness, and grit, because you have no choice but to like just accept to embrace the challenge and be ready to compete and show up constantly, right? And so but yes, like, no, you're spot on. It's crazy because you get back at 5 a.m. It doesn't matter. You're showing up to class right there in a couple hours, and that's the expectation.
Yeah, that's so basketball has a lot of games, but Crystan, I think your situation is a little bit unique as well because you have 2 seasons. You're playing, you're doing indoor track as well as outdoor track. You said a little bit earlier that one of your top priority was academics, so that you don't go unsad and you take care of what you need to. So what kind of pressure was on you, and what kind of tips do you have that help get you through going through 2 seasons, as also the plebe duties, as well as, was there any pressure from your coaches to really perform, or pressure on yourself? And how did you get through that? What kind of helped you get through those challenges?
Right. So the season was a little long. I think we started in October, and it was just October on. So I think for me, just trying to compartmentalize and think of for me because I like to work out anyway. So I use indoor season as preparation for outdoor season. I was like, this is the goal I want to meet during outdoor
Okay.
season. So indoor season is going to be the build up. I might not hit those records now. So I tried. I didn't put the pressure was not too much on track during the first season, if that makes sense. Grade wise, I think a few nights I was just up late. So especially if I had a track, normally track meets were on Saturdays, but when they were during the week, it was a little rough. She had to balance between, okay, am I going to get this done tonight or am I going to get sleep tonight? And of course, balancing trying to perform at the track meet. So, like Grant said, those daily requirements don't go away just because you're competing in your sport. If anything, I don't think anyone feels sorry for you because they're like, okay, you're here, you chose to do your sport. That's just something extra that you enjoy to do, which I did. So you just have to play that balancing act. I think that sometimes the challenging part was, let's say I needed help with homework. So if I didn't have time to get extra instruction from instructors, really leaning on people on the team that were in the same majors, especially the older teammates. Maybe they could help me with some of my homework and that sort of thing. So networking that way within your
Yeah, so understanding that whether it's varsity track and field or it's varsity basketball, it seems like varsity athletes can be away from the company, your company mates for a long time. And so I think that's an important note to bring up is you have your own little team, right, where you guys spend whatever it is, 6 hours a day together. How did that affect your relationships with the company mates in your class that you went through all plebe summer with, but that once the academic and the sports years hit, you spend less time with them. So how did that turn out for you guys? How did that change or alter your relationships with your company mates? And we can start off with Kristen first. I see you shaking your head, and yeah, how did that work out for you?
So the one thing that comes to mind is we have rankings, and with those
Oh,
rankings, I think that's the one negative. I hope I can bring out a positive out of this. But if you are top three or bottom three amongst your company class, you get a comment or some sort of annotation as to why you're top three and bottom three. So being an athlete, you're away from the company a lot. Your time is very split. So for me, I didn't prioritize maybe those friendships because I wanted good grades and I wanted to do well at track. So your time is really cut short in that manner. So I didn't spend time with my company mates. So they had no problems putting me at the bottom or, throwing whatever description they saw first. So that was disheartening sometimes. And I had to accept that. And the unfortunate part is those rankings trickle into what we call an aptitude grade. So in some senses, I thought it wasn't fair for me to get this grade that I thought I didn't earn based on the effort that I was putting in there. That's my experience.
yeah, Grant, did you experience something similar, or was your experience different?
No, it's similar, and I think again, it's one of these things for people who are listening, right? If you're a prospective student coming in, thinking about coming and trying to play a sport at the academy, or if you're a parent just trying to understand the experience of your son or daughter, there is a little bit of a divide, right? We can pretend that there's not, but there's a little bit of a divide between lovingly the term NARP, a non-athletic regular person, right? Someone who's not a varsity athlete, and varsity athletes, and I think it's truly just a lack of understanding, and I feel like a lot of people feel like they hold this like there's almost a pride for like who struggles more, like my experience is harder, right? And so I think that's tough because I roomed with other non-varsity athletes in my junior and senior year, just people who were in the company all the time, some of my good friends from the company, and they didn't realize because again, freshman and sophomore year or plebe year and youngster year, I roomed with other varsity athletes, right? And so
Mhm.
when I started rooming with them my second class and first year, they were like, Grant, I didn't realize how often you were gone, right? Like we didn't realize like how much like you truly were gone for your sport. Like we just assumed you were purposely like trying to get out of things or not show up to things or kind of utilize your excusal from military events to like not be here, right? And so I think again, much like everything in the world, there's a little bit of just lack of understanding. And I think when again, either as someone who's not a varsity athlete or someone who is a varsity athlete, like trying just to make the extra effort and just communicate and show up when you can and let people know like, hey, I'm not trying to get out of things. I'm just constantly gone, right? And I think once they saw that again, I would miss Tuesday afternoon of classes all day Wednesday and get back at Thursday at 4 a.m. and then show up to class at 7:55. They didn't feel as bad when I wasn't at morning formation or like not at parade practice, right? And so there's a certain level of just lack of, I would say, understanding between varsity athletes in the NARPs just because they don't experience it. And again, being a NARP, that's not fun either. I don't want to go to parade practice. I don't want to stand out in the rain and march with a rifle for 2 hours when I have a test tomorrow. Like, I get it. Like, that's not fun either. But I feel like there's a little bit of a head budging match of like, oh, my experience is so much worse. You don't understand me.
Mhm.
And so I think that's kind of where it derives from. And I think it's tough because, again, the varsity athletes are usually the minority in the company compared to the overwhelming. So I think, again, it's tougher to get like the varsity athlete experience, like trying to articulate like, no, I do care. I do appreciate this. And it's just a little bit difficult because not as many people understand your experience. Right. And so that's kind of what I experienced. And it was really an eye-opening awakening when I had roommates who were like, holy smoke, like I didn't realize this is what your schedule was like. Right. And I think that was kind of the bridging to help kind of integrate me in a little bit more in my junior and senior year, because they truly just didn't understand the demand of our time and schedule.
Yeah, that's huge, man. What you said, I think you hit the nail on the head about understanding, right? You know what somebody else is going through, using a little bit of empathy, right? And then also, as athletes, sharing that openly, and then as non-varsity athletes, being open and asking the varsity athletes, what is your life like? I think that helps bridge the gap, and it helps a little bit easier on both sides. But I think your experience is a little bit unique in that. Was it going into your first class year, right? You had a billet as a regimental commander for plebe summer as a varsity athlete. And so can you talk a little bit about how your experience on the basketball court, did you learn anything leadership wise that helped you be a regimental commander, which is the top position in the midshipman chain of command throughout plebe summer?
Yeah. My biggest lesson that I learned from my time at Navy basketball, two factors, two lessons. The first is that the only things that I can control are my attitude and my effort, right? There was a time when I went from playing a lot to not playing a lot where I was very pouty, right? I was like, man, this isn't fair. I'm getting screwed over, right? Like, this is ridiculous. And I had a mentor of mine, old Pookie, Kevin Alter, right? And he came up to me out of a place of love, and he's like, you're being a quitter. Like, you're pouting. Like, stop, right? Like, again, yes, this is your situation. This is the reality of your situation. Now you get to choose how you respond to it. Either you can, embrace this with a positive attitude and bring, again, an effort and try and help the team win, or you're just being selfish, right? And so for me, it was this idea of, again, I have the ability to only control two things, and that's the attitude that I'm going to take and the effort that I'm going to give in whatever we're doing. And then the second thing that helped with that whole thing is that, again, I think the number one thing that makes team sports so great, and like really in addition to the Naval Academy experience, is that, again, in order to win and in order to be a great team player, you need to know your role, acknowledge your role, and then excel in your role, right? It may not be the role that you want, right? When I was a junior senior not playing a lot, that was not the role that I wanted. But the reality was that was my role, right? So I needed to embrace that role and excel in that role and do whatever I could to help the team win. And if that meant being a great practice player, if that meant being super positive, if that meant involving myself in the brigade a little bit more to help mend relationships between the basketball team and the brigade of midshipmen, then that's what I was going to do, right? Because that was what I could contribute to like help the team in a positive way and help the team win, right? And so for me, I love that. And it was really cool to be the Reg Commander because, again, it was this idea of what is your role? I feel like sometimes when people get high-level leadership billets at the brigade of midshipmen, they're like so motivated and they want to train the plebes. I was like, well, if you wanted to train the plebes, you should have been a squad leader. Like this isn't your role as the Reg Commander. Like, you come down with 5 stripes and walking through people's company spaces, like things stop, right? Like things stop and you're getting in people's way, right? And so for me, it was fun to realize, all right, when I'm in this spot, what's my role? How do I embrace that role and how do I excel? So for me, it was like, all right, how do I find midshipmen who are really struggling through thoughts of the day, through detailers passing stuff up the chain and talking to me? And how am I going to go talk to them, help figure out what's in their situation, and try and give them a little bit of encouragement because they're getting beat down every day to keep them going through the process, right? And so I love my experience because I was moments away as a plebe from leaving, right? Like I had conversations with my company officer about going to Tango Company and leaving. I was not about it. I didn't like it. And at that point in my life, I realized how lucky and how grateful I was to still be at the academy. And so I wanted to be that for the next wave of midshipmen that we're going through, right? And so that's what I love most about the role is I had the ability to go talk to all like cherry pick from across the fourth class
Mm-hmm.
regiment and be able to like go find that person who was struggling and like tell them just to wait one more day, right? Like help them just
Mm-hmm.
kind of get calm down from the emotional high and make it to the next day. And so for me, that was super fun. And that was, again, kind of that's what my role was. That's where I could make the impact. And so I wanted to really do that well, right? And so those are the lessons that I learned through basketball that really helped me kind of in the military side.
Yeah, no, that's great, man. I'm taking notes as I'm hearing you speak with attitude, effort, knowing your role, embracing your role, and excelling in that role. And I'm interested, Kristen, did you have a similar experience, or can you share a little bit about what did you learn from doing indoor and outdoor and track and field? The biggest thing you learned, and how did that transition to being able to use that in a role within the brigade? I got it. You do a lot of stuff on the field, right? But how did you use that role as they teach us? We want to develop mentally, morally, and physically. And how did you use that? What you learned from your sport?
I think one, like I said before, plebe year, I struggled so hard in not hitting the goal that I could have been done with track. I was like, this is it. I'm terrible now. I was like, I don't know what's going on. So just, I think, sticking to something that maybe you approaching it differently and not giving up. And let me see the best way to say this. Yeah. So the biggest thing, one thing is just approaching challenges differently and trying to figure out what works, whether it be with like studying or dealing with different personalities. So that was the first time in my life I had to live with roommates. So that was a challenge for me. And figure out what works for you and how you can use your talents to bring people together and maybe work together. Track team, another thing was teamwork, and overcoming is not just me. But the biggest thing, of course, with Naval Academy is the whole Army, the rivalry. So coming together for that, going from individual sport to this is like, okay, we got to come and win this and beat Army right now. And I know you guys shared those same goals there. I think those was the big things for me.
Yeah, right. So you talk about like the track team coming together, and then you be able to work with your roommates and people in your company. But then after 4 years, right, life changes. We go from being a midshipman to being a junior officer in the Navy or the Marine Corps. And so, the stakes are higher, right? You're not worried about beating Army or trying to do great at the pin relays. It's like, no, you're facing the country's enemies, right? On a deployed ship, whether it's in Fifth Fleet or in the Pacific or wherever it may be around the world. And so, generally in the Navy, right, it's my understanding, right, you get a division once you graduate, if you're a surface warfare officer in this case. Can you talk a little bit about, was there any relation from being on the track team to getting a division of sailors? And did you lose any leadership from being a varsity athlete to once you hit the fleet as a naval officer?
So 2 examples, I felt the very similar experience. So one with the track team, I was like senior on the track team. I wasn't the captain, but I was really ahead of all the jumpers. So like I was really close to them, really pushing them and kind of telling them what didn't work for me, almost like a side coach, if that makes sense. So that was pretty cool, and getting that leadership aspect out the way, leading by example, always making sure I'm doing all my lifts properly and, putting in 100% effort for all the sprints and that sort of thing. The other leadership experience I had was I was able to be XO for plebe summer going into my first year. So that was like full circle moment. So I remember at first I wasn't sure if I wanted to do that. I was like, man, I don't know if I'm equipped to lead the new plebes coming in. But that was an awesome experience because in some ways I was leading the plebes and I was leading my peers. So setting an example for them and kind of taking that step back and watching them make those stupid mistakes and kind of remembering those are the same mistakes that I made. And then at the same time, keeping my peers in check and kind of guiding them in their leadership style and doing like the end of day speech. I don't know if you guys remember that. So I think all those correspond now, leading to my division and seeing those new sailors, new faces. It's their first ship and they're learning how to put their uniforms on for the first time and they're meeting their chief and figuring out how to do maintenance. So, and those, in that same aspect, just the newness and learning a routine and realizing how far I've come and how I can share those ideas with other people.
Yeah, right. Great. So that's great being able to see that connection between, your life on the track team and then being able to work with plebes and then being able to work with sailors. And Grant, I'm interested to hear about your experience as, you transition from not playing so much your junior and senior year, but then you transition from being a midshipman to a commissioned officer.
Yeah.
Did you still see some of those some of what you use on the basketball team to communicate and be a leader as a junior officer?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I think like the two things that I'm most grateful for team sports, one is the ability to have hard conversations, right? Like whether that's a coach talking to me or me talking to a teammate or teammates talking, right? Like the ability to have uncomfortable conversations because we're not performing the way we're supposed to be performing was a huge skill that I learned from team sports, right? Because when you get out to the fleet, again, you're going to care about people, you're going to love people, you're going to want to invest and help them win. And some people are still going to struggle, or some people are not going to buy in, and you're going to have uncomfortable conversations with people. And so for me, that had become a skill because again, it's not coming out of a place of malice. It's not coming out of a place of like, you're horrible and like you're a bad person. It's like, no, as a division, as a team, this is what we need to do to win. Right. And again, if I'm on the basketball court and my teammates not setting screens the way they're supposed to be setting screens and the way they need to in order for us to like
Right.
score a basket and for us to win, like, yeah, we're going to say something because I'm like, I want to win. Right. And so kind of taking that mentality of like, hey, this is a sense of accountability because I care. It's a sense of accountability because like I want to see us succeed, not because I'm picking on you. Right. And so having that approach and that ability to have uncomfortable conversations, I think was like a huge translation between college athletics and like coming in a leadership management position, going in right away. And then again, I think kind of the number one thing, and this is being a midshipman, but also being a varsity athlete, is it gets you really good at doing hard things. Being a student athlete at the Naval Academy is really hard. Increasing your triple jump, like record and length and distance, like that's really hard because once you've hit a certain peak of athleticism, now it comes down to details. Now it comes down to skill. Now it comes down to routine and practice and being great at your craft, right? And like doing difficult things is something you just get used to. It's a muscle that you need to train. And so I loved, my time as a varsity athlete and kind of going through adversity, overcoming adversity, facing difficult times, and then getting to the other side. Because once I got to the fleet, now you're faced with real adult problems, right? Like when you're a midshipman, it's all a little fairyland. Like, yeah, I'm mad because my Division I sports experience isn't going the way I want it to, right? Like, darn, right? But then you get to the fleet, and now there's a real sailor coming to you with real problems, right? And you're the one who has to help them with it and has to support them through it and has to get them the resources that they need, right? So even though it's not a direct translation, it's this idea of not being afraid of confrontation and not being afraid of difficulty and being like used to pushing through hard times that like I think separates a lot of people in a really positive way because they've experienced those things before and they're ready to take on whatever challenge that comes with being a leader and a manager, right? In the fleet or, as a Marine. So that's kind of the biggest takeaways I had from my time as an athlete.
Yeah, no, and I think that as we wrap up soon, I think that takeaway what you just mentioned may be one of the biggest benefits, but I'll let you explain that. My question is advice to current high school students that may be considering the Naval Academy, and they may be athletes, right? And there's a plethora of options out there. And it seems like what you guys told me, there's a lot of sacrifices at the Naval Academy, whether it's time, whether it's playing time at your sport, whether it's the military duties. What can you say or what advice would you give to a high school student that's debating, should I sacrifice my freedom and some of those liberties that I have of going to, said name state school versus possible some of the future benefits of going through the Naval Academy and being able to experience some of the things that both you and Grant said. So what advice would you give to a current high school student that's battling those two sides?
Right. So, I mean, for someone to be even considered for the Naval Academy, that already says a lot about you, your character, the effort you put in so far in your life. But I think what helped me I was so back and forth when I was going through that process. But going through the Naval Academy, I remember I was like, I could show up naked and be taken care of. Like they give you your uniforms, they're giving you your books, they're giving you your backpack, they're giving you your food, and they take care of everything. You don't have to worry. All you have to do is show up to class on time. and of course, practice if you're on the team. And on the back end, you have a job, and it sets you up so well for whether you want to be in the military for 20 years, whether you want to be in for whatever the commitment is. But I just think the life experiences that you get at the Naval, it's such a unique experience. Anybody can go to a regular college, but very get to be selected and go to the Naval Academy and go through that experience, learn the things we do, go through the summer trainings, get to ride on different types of ships, train with Marines. I remember we played paintball with Marines, which was crazy. Go on a submarine. So all those experiences are just so unique, and it's not, and then it doesn't have to be forever. I think it's worth it, and I think you gain so much leadership. You learn a lot about yourself going through that experience.
No, I think that's awesome. I think one of those experiences that you didn't mention, because I think you're a little bit humble, but for those that don't know, Crystan had the chance to go study an advanced degree, right? A master's degree at MIT, and she got a master's in mechanical engineering, which not everybody gets to do, right? So congratulations on that. But Grant, I think you also have a special place. I know you also do, amongst the many of plethora of things that you do, you also referee on college basketball games. So tying that into the new landscape of recruits that are coming up in NIL deals, what can you say as far as if I'm a student and I have the opportunity to potentially make large sums of NIL money versus going to the Naval Academy, which generally I'm not sure they're able to accept it. How do I balance that? What would attract me to the Naval Academy versus the opportunity to make thousands of dollars at another state school?
Yeah, it's difficult, right? It's difficult for sure, and it adds another level of complexity. And I'm not here trying to be like, oh yeah, just choose the service over, you know what I mean? But I think here's the reality, and this is the advice I give to any high school, like a student athlete in general, who's dedicated a lot of time to being really good at their sport. Don't let your sport use you. Use your sport to get where you want to go in life, right? Like there are a lot of things. Basketball got me into schools that I otherwise would not have been able to get to without basketball, right? And so if you allow your sport to jerk you around or drag you, or you kind of become, reliant upon that sport and you let it use you, you're in a bad situation. Whereas if you use the game of basketball or you use your sport to open doors to get where you want to go in life, then you're really succeeding, right? And this is where I think if you can use your sport to get an opportunity to go to a service academy, to go to the Naval Academy, to go to West Point, to go to Air Force, you've opened up a path that is going to set you up for life. I genuinely believe that the Naval Academy was the best decision I ever made in my life, and it's the best decision a lot of people have, because there's a real power in being a midshipman and becoming someone who is really good at overcoming adversity. There's unbelievable experience of being a junior officer, going to travel, like you're saying, getting graduate degrees. Like you're set up for life with a career. You're making good money, right? You have a great career. You have path for progression, whether that be in the military or out, right? You've set yourself up for massive success and massive life experience, getting an opportunity to serve the Navy and Marine Corps team, to get to lead sailors and Marines and be tasked with like leadership and care and direction. It's incredible responsibility and an honor. And then on top of that, you join the Naval Academy network, right? When we talk about this, when we talk about setting yourself up for life, right? Not making a 4-year decision, but making a 40+ year decision, being a part of the Service Academy network is so crucial. And it's such a tight-knit network because of how difficult being a midshipman is, because of how difficult being a junior officer is, right? It's those experiences that bond you around those like common values of resilience, grit, and toughness, and get you ready to succeed wherever you want to go in life, right? And so that's my biggest recruiting pitch that I have for service academies, is that you have put in so much hard work as a young man or woman to put yourself in this spot to go to a service academy to play a sport. Now take advantage of that and go down the right path to set yourself up for life, right? For life. And I think that is like what separates the service academies in comparison to any other education, right? In terms of any other education. And so that's kind of how I feel about it.
No, Grant, thanks for that note. I think you may have made one mistake. You said that going to the Naval Academy may have been the greatest decision that you made in your life, but I would beg to differ and say maybe the second best decision you made in your life. Because
I can't have that next decision if it wasn't for going to the Naval Academy. That's all I'm saying. For anyone listening, I just got engaged to my lovely fiance, Dominique. She's a class of 19 grad. She's a helicopter pilot. And so, yeah, I mean, choosing your life partner is the most important decision, and that is the best decision I ever made in my life. But it only happened because I went to the Naval Academy. So
no, it's great. So we're gonna end it right there on that note. I just want to say thanks to Grant and thank you, Crystan, for and again, what our mission here at the Academy Insider is really to guide, to serve, and to support midshipmen, future midshipmen, and their families, to provide a little more insight, so it's a little bit easier for you guys to understand what midshipmen are going through, and for prospective midshipmen, those high school students around the U.S. and its territories that may be thinking about a service academy. So thank you again, Crystan. Thank you again, Grant, for sharing your experiences. And without a doubt, I know this podcast is going to be able to have an effect on the families of midshipmen, and future potential midshipmen. So thank you, guys.
thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Academy Insider podcast. I really hope you liked it, enjoyed it, and learned something during this time. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe or leave a comment about the episode. We really appreciate to hear your feedback about everything and continue to make Academy Insider an amazing service that guides, serves, and supports midshipmen, future midshipmen, and their families. Thank you.